I stared at the screen. My sister's words burning into my mind. I was nothing to her. Just a stepping stone. A resource to be drained. A fool to be played. Every smile. Every fake apology. Every moment she pretended to care had been a lie. My stomach twisted in disgust. She had never loved me. Only what I could give her. And now, she thought I was too blind to see it. Never again. I never thought my sister, Crystal, would come back into my life. Let alone with open arms. For years, she thrived in her world of social prestige and calculated friendships. While I built my life with hard work and self-reliance, Crystal was the golden child. The one who always got the best. While I was the dependable one. The one they knew would survive on her own. I didn't need their validation, or at least, that's what I told myself. Then, out of nowhere, she started texting me. Little check-ins, invitations to brunch, compliments laced with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. We should reconnect. Diamond, I miss my big sister. The words looked so sincere on my screen. And for a fleeting moment, I let myself believe them. Maybe she had changed. Maybe she really did miss me. So, when she invited me to a lavish event, saying she wanted me there by her side, I hesitated but agreed. I told myself this could be a fresh start. What I didn't know was that I was walking straight into a trap. One carefully laid by the very person who was supposed to love me the most. The invitation arrived in a thick, gold-trimmed envelope, embossed with my sister Crystal's initials in a way that screamed extravagance. Join me for an unforgettable evening. The card read, a personal touch. Just for me. It felt strange, seeing my name in her handwriting again. After all the years we'd spent as distant strangers. Still, I convinced myself this was her way of making amends. Maybe, just maybe, she truly wanted to fix what was broken between us. The night of the event, I stepped into the grand ballroom. The chandeliers casting golden light over a sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. Crystal greeted me at the entrance. Her arms open, her perfect smile beaming. Diamond, you look stunning, she gushed, looping her arm through mine like we'd always been this close. I let myself believe the warmth in her voice. Let myself fall into the illusion that my sister wanted me here because she cared. But then, the whispers started. Small snippets of conversations caught in passing. I can't believe she actually came. She has no idea. Does she really think Crystal invited her out of kindness? My stomach twisted as unease crept in. The final blow came when I overheard Crystal herself. Her voice low but laced with amusement. Just wait. She still thinks we care about her. She has no idea what's coming. I froze. The words felt like a physical slap, knocking the air from my lungs. My heart pounded as I processed what I had just heard. My sister, my own sister, had set me up. But why? What was she planning? I turned to find her across the room, laughing with her friends, raising a champagne glass in a silent toast. The same hand that had so affectionately gripped my arm just moments ago now rested carelessly on the back of a chair. Completely unaware that the illusion was crumbling. My fingers curled into fists. This wasn't about mending the past. This was a game to her. And I had walked right into it. I forced my breath to steady, my hands to relax, my expression to remain unreadable. If Crystal thought I was too naive to catch on, then I would let her believe it, for now. Whatever game she was playing, whatever betrayal she had in store, I wouldn't be the fool she expected. I smoothed the fabric of my dress, took a sip of champagne, and stepped deeper into the crowd, blending in like I belonged. Crystal floated through the room like a queen holding court, basking in the glow of admiration and carefully curated attention. I watched from the sidelines, waiting, listening. Every detail mattered now. The way her friends glanced at me and smirked. The way certain conversations halted when I walked past. A few guests, strangers to me, whispered behind their hands, their eyes flickering in my direction before quickly looking away. Then I heard it. Does she even know the money's already gone? The words sent a cold wave down my spine. I turned, carefully, catching sight of a sleek-haired woman murmuring into her date's ear. She didn't notice me. too caught up in her amusement. The money? What money? Crystal's laughter rang through the air again. A delicate, artificial melody. And suddenly, everything clicked into place. This wasn't just some petty humiliation. This was something much bigger. I slipped toward a quiet corner and pulled out my phone. My banking app loaded slowly, as if it already knew I wouldn't like what I was about to see. The moment the numbers appeared on the screen, my stomach plummeted. My account balance, nearly drained. I sucked in a sharp breath, my vision blurring for a second before snapping into perfect clarity. Crystal had done something I hadn't seen coming. And she thought she had already won. I turned my gaze back to my sister, watching her bask in her victory. She had no idea that the real game was just beginning. I refused to panic. Panic was what Crystal wanted. It was what she expected. If she had drained my account, then she thought she had backed me into a corner, left me powerless, scrambling for help. But she didn't know me as well as she thought she did. She didn't realize that I wasn't the same person who once looked up to her, desperate for approval. I wasn't that naive little sister anymore. I was Diamond Evans, and I refused to break. I took a slow breath, forcing my heartbeat to steady as I walked through the party with the same confidence I had arrived with. Every step I took was deliberate, calculated. If Crystal thought she had won, I would let her believe it, for now. But I wasn't defeated. I was planning my next move. The first thing I did was protect what was left. Before Crystal could touch anything else, I locked my remaining funds, flagged my accounts, and called my lawyer. Within minutes, I had security measures in place, preventing further damage. Crystal had landed a punch, but she hadn't knocked me out. If anything, she had only woken up the fighter in me. Then, I started digging. Crystal wasn't smart enough to pull this off alone. Someone had helped her. And I intended to find out who. I combed through records, emails, any digital trace she had left behind. I reached out to contacts she didn't even know I had, building a case before she could even realize I was fighting back. And as I worked, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of her anymore. I wasn't begging for her love or waiting for her approval. I wasn't standing in her shadow. No, this time, I was standing in the light, and I was coming for everything she stole. She had underestimated me, just like everyone else had. That was her first mistake. Her second? Thinking I was someone she could break. I smiled to myself, determination hardening into something unshakable. Crystal thought she won? She had no idea who she was dealing with. The moment I stepped into Crystal's penthouse, I felt the weight of history pressing down on me. Every deception, every lie, every condescension, it had all led to this. She sat there, sprawled across her velvet couch, sipping a glass of wine as if she had no worries in the world. But I knew better. The slight tremor in her hand, the way her perfectly lined lips twitched at the corners, she knew the reckoning was coming. I didn't speak right away. Instead, I walked around the room slowly, letting my heels click against the marble floor. Crystal hated silence. She thrived on drama, on controlling the conversation, so I denied her that power. I made her wait. Finally, she exhaled loudly and rolled her eyes. If you came here to whine, Diamond, you're wasting your time. What's done is done. I let out a soft chuckle, tilting my head. You think I'm here to whine? I let the words settle, watching the smirk fade from her face. Then, I pulled out the envelope from my purse and tossed it onto the table in front of her. Go ahead, open it. She hesitated, then tore it open, her eyes scanning the documents inside. I saw the exact moment realization dawned. The color drained from her face. What is this? She stammered. Proof, I said simply, of every dollar you stole from me. Every shady transaction, every forged signature. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. You were sloppy, Crystal, and I have everything I need to take you down. She swallowed hard, but I wasn't finished. Oh, and in case you're wondering, these files? They're not just in my hands. My lawyer has copies. My bank. Even a journalist friend of mine. Just in case you decide to try something cute. Her jaw clenched. For the first time in her life, Crystal was trapped. I picked up her glass of wine, swirled it, and then set it back down untouched. You always thought I was weak, I said, standing tall. That was your last mistake. And with that, I turned and walked out, leaving her to drown in the mess she created. As I stepped into the courtroom, a strange calm settled over me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. For years, I had been dismissed, manipulated, and used like a pawn in Crystal's game. But today, I was no one's pawn. Today, I was the one calling checkmate. Crystal sat at the defendant's table, her normally flawless exterior showing the first cracks of real fear. Her hands were clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. Her lawyer whispered furiously in her ear, probably urging her to keep calm, to play the innocent victim. But there was no audience for her theatrics this time. No luxury penthouse to hide behind. No doting admirers to defend her. The judge cleared his throat, flipping through the file of evidence my team had gathered. Miss Evans, he addressed Crystal. The evidence presented shows a clear pattern of financial fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of funds over several years. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Crystal's eyes flickered to me. I held her gaze, unflinching. She saw it then, the thing she had never expected. Strength, resilience, power. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to fight. But the reality was settling in. She was done. She turned to her lawyer, whispering something, but I could already see the way she was shrinking into herself. The weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. The judge's voice broke through the tension. Given the severity of these charges and the undeniable evidence against you, the court finds you guilty on all counts. The words rang through the room like a final, echoing bell. Guilty, the sweetest sound I had ever heard. A slow, satisfied smile spread across my face as I watched the bailiff move toward Crystal. The woman who once stood above me, looking down with disdain, was now being led away in handcuffs, her designer heels clicking against the floor like a funeral march. I took a deep breath, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. Crystal always believed she would win, that I would always be weak. She was wrong. I walked out of the courtroom, the bright sun hitting my face. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the reflection of a woman I barely recognized. For years, I had seen myself through Crystal's lens, a lesser version of her. Always second, always overshadowed, but now, I saw something different: strength, independence, power. The weight of years spent under her control was finally lifting. But freedom felt unfamiliar, almost foreign. What does one do after winning a battle they were never supposed to fight in the first place? I had spent so long proving myself, uncovering every lie, exposing every scheme, and ensuring Crystal finally answered for what she had done. But the truth was, revenge wasn't the ending, it was just the beginning. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the name, Mom. Of course. I let the call go to voicemail, knowing exactly what it would say. Something about family, forgiveness, and how I needed to show compassion for Crystal, the same woman who had drained my accounts, forged my name, and tried to destroy my reputation. The same woman who had never shown me an ounce of mercy. I exhaled sharply. No, I wasn't playing that game anymore. Instead, I grabbed my laptop and opened the email I had been drafting. A new beginning was waiting for me. I had spent years working under Crystal's shadow, struggling to find my own place. But I wasn't lost anymore. I had secured a position with a major nonprofit organization that focused on supporting women rebuilding their lives after financial and emotional abuse. It was work that mattered. Work that gave people like me a second chance. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. When I opened it, my best friend, Liana, stood there, holding a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. To freedom, she said with a grin, holding one out. I laughed, clinking my glass against hers, to finally choosing myself. I took a sip, feeling the last chains of my past fall away. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was walking towards something better. The morning sun streamed through my window as I sat at my desk, fingers hovering over my laptop keyboard. This was it, the moment I took full control of my future, not one dictated by Crystal. Not one spent cleaning up the wreckage she left behind, but one entirely my own. For years, I had been trapped in a cycle, giving, forgiving, waiting for her to change. She never did, but I did. I had changed. I had broken free. And now, I wasn't just walking away from the past, I was building something better. I took a deep breath and pressed send. The email confirmed my commitment to the nonprofit organization, officially sealing my role as the new director of a program dedicated to helping women regain their financial independence. Women like me, women who had been manipulated, deceived, used. I knew what it felt like to lose everything, to have the people you trusted most betray you. But now, I had the power to help others rebuild. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about empowerment. My phone rang. Liana. I smiled and picked up. Tell me you did it, she said, skipping any greeting. I did it. A loud whoop echoed through the phone. That's my girl. You're unstoppable now, Diamond. They'll never be able to touch you again. She was right. Crystal had taken so much from me, my confidence, my stability, my sense of self, but she had underestimated me. She thought I would always be the quiet, obedient sister, always the afterthought, but I had rewritten my story. I stood, stretching, feeling lighter than I had in years. This was my life now. My choices, my successes, my future. No more waiting, no more hoping others would change. I had taken back my power. And I was never giving it away again. The crisp evening air wrapped around me as I stepped out onto my apartment balcony. A steaming mug of tea cradled in my hands. The city lights stretched endlessly before me, glowing like 1,000 tiny promises of a future I had fought so hard to claim. For the first time in years, I felt free, truly free. No longer shackled to Crystal's manipulations. No longer waiting for approval that would never come. No longer living in the shadow of a sister who had never once valued me beyond what I could provide. Tonight, I was celebrating myself. I leaned against the railing, staring at my reflection in the glass door. I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked stronger, wiser, unbreakable. My phone buzzed on the patio table. I picked it up, half expecting another guilt-laden message from my mother or one of Crystal's former enablers. But instead, it was a text from Liana. Liana, you ready for tomorrow? Big day, boss. I grinned. Tomorrow marked the official launch of the financial independence program I had built from the ground up. A program designed for women like me, women who had been used, manipulated, and gaslit into believing they weren't enough. I thought back to the person I had been just a year ago, doubting myself, questioning whether I had the strength to walk away. Now, I was the one creating opportunities, not waiting for them. I set my mug down, grabbed my laptop, and opened the email I had drafted earlier, a final step in severing the last lingering ties to my past. With a deep breath, I clicked send. The email was to my mother. A clear, firm, unapologetic message. I am done, not just with Crystal, but with the cycle of manipulation and guilt you've weaponized against me. I have built something incredible without your help, without Crystal's interference, and without sacrificing myself to keep the peace. I will not go back. I will not beg for love. And I will not be guilted into saving someone who never once cared if I drowned. I exhaled as the message disappeared into the void. Tomorrow was the first day of my real life. And this time, I wasn't looking back. The universe had a funny way of balancing the scales. And tonight, it was Crystal's turn to taste what it felt like to be discarded. I walked into the grand hall of the gala, my heels clicking against the marble floor with a confidence I had earned through every battle fought and won. The chandeliers cast their golden glow over the sea of well-dressed investors, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders, the very people I now stood among as an equal. A year ago, I would have been on the sidelines, watching Crystal bask in the spotlight, her voice dripping with fake sweetness as she spun lies about her own importance. Not tonight. Tonight, I was the one they were here to see. As I moved through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging polite conversation, I spotted her at the far end of the room. Crystal stood near the open bar, gripping a champagne flute like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. Her designer gown and meticulously styled hair couldn't hide the tension in her features, the desperation clinging to her like perfume gone stale. She had fallen hard. I had heard the whispers before I even stepped into the event. Crystal's latest business venture had crumbled. And with it, her connections, her finances, and her carefully curated reputation. The very people who once indulged her now avoided eye contact, their conversations shifting the moment she approached. She was a sinking ship, and no one wanted to be dragged down with her. It was almost too perfect. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time in our lives, I saw fear in them. Not the fear of failure, she had always believed she was untouchable, but the fear of irrelevance. She took a hesitant step toward me, her lips parting as if to speak, but I simply smiled and turned away. I was no longer her audience. Let her know what it felt like to be invisible. As I stepped onto the stage to deliver my keynote speech, one that would cement my place as a leader in financial empowerment, I finally understood. This wasn't revenge, this was justice. Crystal had built her world on manipulation and selfish ambition. I had built mine on strength, integrity, and resilience. And tonight, the right person had won. I had expected to feel something, anger, regret, nostalgia, but as I walked away from Crystal, from the wreckage of everything she had built on lies and manipulation, all I felt was relief. The weight of years spent chasing her approval, of playing the loyal sister while she trampled over my kindness, had finally lifted. I was free. The night was still young, but I had no interest in lingering at the gala. My work here was done. My message had been delivered, not with vengeance, but with power. I had proven, to the world and to myself, that I was never the weak one. I stepped outside, breathing in the crisp evening air, feeling the cool wind wrap around me like a silent promise of new beginnings. As if the universe wanted to give me one last test, my phone buzzed. Crystal. I stared at the screen for a long moment, watching her name flicker, waiting for the old instinct to kick in, the need to fix things, to be the one who patched up the damage she had caused. But it never came. I wasn't that person anymore. I let it ring. Then, I blocked her number. No more second chances. No more being used. A warm voice pulled me from my thoughts. Leaving so soon? I turned to see Daniel, the one person in the room who had seen me before I even saw myself. He was leaning casually against a pillar, his expression amused, but his eyes held something deeper. Admiration, understanding. Yeah, I admitted, tucking my phone away. I think I'm done here. He tilted his head, studying me. And what's next? I smiled, for the first time in a long time, completely sure of the answer. Whatever I want. And as we walked down the steps together, leaving behind the past and stepping into a future of my own making, I realized something. For the first time in my life, my story was mine to write. For so long, I had let others define me, Crystal's shadow, the overlooked sister, the one who always gave and never took. But now, as I stood before a room filled with people who had gathered not for her, but for me, I knew I had rewritten my story. The past no longer held power over me. The grand opening of the Diamond Initiative, my nonprofit organization for young entrepreneurs, had drawn in leaders, investors, and dreamers alike. A year ago, I would have second-guessed myself, doubted my ability to stand at the helm of something this big. But tonight, there was no doubt. As I took the stage, the applause was thunderous, not out of obligation, not because of my last name, but because I had earned it. I had built this from the ground up, no shortcuts, no deceit, no handouts, just resilience, intelligence, and a refusal to be underestimated. I spotted Daniel in the crowd, his proud smile steady, a reminder of how far I had come. But this moment wasn't about him, wasn't about Crystal, wasn't about proving anything to anyone but myself. I gripped the microphone, exhaled, and spoke the words I had always needed to hear. No one gets to tell you what you're worth. Only you decide that. The audience erupted, but I barely heard them, because at that moment, I had won. Not over Crystal. Not over the past. But over the voice inside me that had once believed I wasn't enough. I stepped off the stage. The weight of my past finally shed. The world was mine now. And I was ready to claim it.